Welcome everyone to the Delivering Content to Engineers webinar. This is 6 marketing tips for manufacturers. We're going to start things off with a little housekeeping. We're going to talk about how to submit questions. Andre is manning the chat and moderating today. So fill out the chat form on the right with any questions and we'll do our best to get to them at the end. We will be following up with a PDF and a video of the recording. So if that's your question, we got you covered. So let's get to who will be presenting today. My name is Adam Beck. Am I off by a slide here? I think I'm ahead. It's okay. My name is Adam Beck. I am all about inbound content. I've been marketing for 20 years. I've worked in the past for manufacturers, helping promote products. Now I work for Cadinas Part Solutions as the Director of Marketing, where we help manufacturers provide shareable content to their users. That content tends to be engineering data, CAD and BIM files, configurable PDF data sheets, and 3D previews.
Hey everyone, I'm Wendy Covey. I'm the CEO and co-founder of True Marketing. We help technical companies build trust and grow their business using content marketing. A little bit about myself. I've been in the engineering space for over 20 years, all that time in marketing. Before founding True 13 years ago, I was part of the leadership team at National Instruments, now known as NI. And I also published a book last year. It's called Content Marketing Engineered, and I have a podcast by the same name. So glad you're here today.
All right, I'm glad to have you here too. I'm excited to get going on this. Let's get to the goals of this webinar. So I'm super excited about this because I don't think it's ever been done before, where 2 surveys come together and discuss their results. We're going to get insights from the research about how engineers and architects seek information for their jobs. We'll also identify ways to improve your content and online experience to attract, nurture, and convert technical buyers. So let's get into the surveys themselves. At Cadinas Part Solutions, we surveyed 128,000 part community users. These are engineers and architects who recently opted in from our portals. We had several thousand who completed the survey, which gave us a great sample size to draw conclusions from.
That is a great sample size, and ours is very similar. This marks the 4th consecutive year that Global Spec and True Marketing have partnered together to better understand how engineers and technical buyers seek and consume information to make purchase decisions. We had over 1,300 engineers and technical buyers across the globe respond to our survey. And the report is interesting because we've been doing this for several years now. We have findings that are reinforced year after year, and we also have findings that show generational trends, and both of which I'll highlight as we walk through the research today. So our format today will be that Adam and I will walk through a portion of our research findings from each report, and then we'll discuss those topics. And then at the very end, we'll wrap things up with our top 6 marketing tips for manufacturers. Don't forget about the chat pane. You're welcome to ask a question anytime, and we'll field those questions at the end of the presentation as time allows. So with that, let's get started with our first research finding. Okay, here we go. We asked, in thinking about the entire buying process for a significant work purchase, how much of that process happens online before you choose to speak to someone at a company? So the engineers and technical buyers, as you can see, have moved online to complete much of the buying process. 62% of respondents completed more than half of the buying process online before they wanted to talk to sales. This is very similar to what we've seen in previous years. Time spent online is even greater for younger engineers who are digital natives.
Yeah, this is a perfect lead-in for the rest of the findings because it's something manufacturers really need to think about. We assume online shopping is only for B2C or retail products where something is actually being purchased directly, but applies to anyone selling anything nowadays. Manufacturers need to ask themselves, are they currently providing the data and tools their audience needs to research and make those buying decisions?
Yeah, and in addition, I think this highlights, not only having a strong online presence, but also companies should keep in mind that engineers are not ready to talk to a salesperson early in their journey. And so I know, Adam, you've been to sites where people immediately push for that sales engagement. Maybe they have that contact us form right on their homepage, for instance. or maybe a sales team calls them once a technical buyer fills out that very first form. And that's just too soon. And those companies aren't in sync with these buyer preferences that want to self-educate first. So
If they
definitely
are going to
something
follow up,
important to
they
keep
need
in
to make
mind.
sure that, yeah, make sure that the message is right if they're going to do that right off the bat.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So, speaking of online behavior, let's look at what happened when COVID caused a halt to travel and face to face events. We asked, when industry conferences and trade shows were canceled, where did you go for information and networking opportunities? And as you can see here, during the COVID shutdown, engineers turned to their tried and true channels. Supplier websites, industry trade websites, and e-newsletters have long been popular channels for engineers to turn to when seeking information. However, in the wake of cancellations, an increased number of engineers turned to trade publications. This switch might have been because these publications were often also responsible for those in-person events, and engineers were looking for the same news they would typically have gathered during those in-person events, like trade shows. I also want to point out the finding on e-newsletters. This remains a consistent valued source for information. And in another research question, which we're not going to go into depth today, we dug in further on e-newsletters and found that a whopping 92% of engineers subscribe to at least one e-newsletter. Out of those, 43% are likely to subscribe to 3 to 5, and 1/5 of the respondents said they subscribe to 6 or more e-newsletters. And then when you break this out by age, it's really interesting. So the Gen Xers like me and above are more likely to just subscribe to 6 or more e-newsletters. So we like our email, whereas younger counterparts are half that. They want to look at half as many e-newsletters.
Is it weird that I want to jump up and cheer every time I hear Gen X? Because I'm sticking up for
Not at
people.
all, not at all.
So to me, it's line one that jumps out and adds emphasis to the previous findings. We do in-person events to meet and greet and build those relationships, but you don't have that. So it's moved online and it's happening on the vendor website. So is that content they need available to learn and discover and select the correct product? Is it what the audience needs? We saw this last year in our stats. Our portal downloads from all of our manufacturers jumped 45% year over year to more than 660 million downloads. That's
What a
engineers.
huge jump, Adam.
Yeah, and that's engineers and architects all going out to research products, select content to put into their designs. So let's get to the next one. We asked, when searching for supplier parts online, which of the following are most important to your selection experience? The most important factor for engineers and architects was 72% wanted a simple and easy to use website, with native and CAD and BIM downloads following closely behind at 65%. This is telling me that engineers and architects want to get in, navigate a manufacturer website quickly, get the data they need, and get back to work.
You know, it's very telling that simple and easy was the #1 response. And it indicates to me how many websites out there still have a poor user experience. And, you know, it's tempting for we marketers to jump in and want to add bells and whistles to our websites, such as product configurators and online chat. But this research tells me that usability provides the biggest payoff. And until you have that nailed, you should move on to these other features.
Yeah, just make it easy, make everything easy. A great thing to do is to have someone that's not at your company test your site, navigate around, and tell you if they can figure it out, or if they're confused, that's a great indicator that you might have something to fix.
Oh, exactly. You know, too often companies use their own terminology, and especially in their navigation. So think like part name, product names, or acronyms, heaven forbid, and they're not thinking from a user's point of view. So it's important to identify your target personas, construct your navigation and your user paths towards those audience groups, and then test with real, actual customers and target individuals, not just your internal staff. So, you know, Adam, my 2020 research report also asked a similar question about web experiences. Let's take a look. We asked, think of your favorite work-related websites. What features are most important to your experience? So here we have There we go. Here we have a different set of response options focused on various content and various features that a website might have. We kind of mixed them in together. And again, similar responses. In-depth technical content and specs blew away the other web features, with product configurators at a distant third. Only 20% of respondents ranked e-commerce in their top three. So if you're weighing web investment for 2021, you might want to allocate your budget towards technical content and usability rather than a costly e-commerce project.
Yeah, it's interesting to me how different the questions are structured, but the responses are so similar when you step back and see what they're saying. It's all about available content, the detail, the accuracy of information, helping them get what they need and get back to work.
Yeah, exactly. Companies that are generous with technical content are more likely to convert buyers. That's what this data is saying. So speaking of technical content, I'm often asked, what types of content should I be creating for my technical company? Let's take a look at that finding. We asked, how valuable are the following pieces of content when researching information to make a purchase decision? And what I want you to look at is the dark blue bar and the light blue bar. These are very valued or somewhat valuable. And you see here that engineers and technical buyers are hungry for information and they consume content in a variety of forms. Data sheets, case studies, white papers, and product demo videos top the list as the most valuable content types for this audience. This is very much in line with our previous year's findings. When you look at the red, that's the not very valuable category. You'll see that there's not a lot of red. So podcasts are the least valued of the content types. But in another research question, we asked, do you listen to podcasts for work? And 50% of technical buyers said that yes, they listen to at least one podcast for 30 minutes weekly for work. And I think this will be a growing channel and one to keep an eye on over the years.
Yeah, definitely. It's line one that catches my eye because it reveals a small secret we don't talk about very often, that PDF data sheets tend to be the most popular format downloaded from many of our manufacturers. And it might seem counterintuitive, but it's that one universal format that everyone uses. All of the individual CAD formats are super important for their verticals and their industries, but they're all fighting for market share. The PDF is the one universal format that everyone uses. So these need to be available, accurate, and full of detail. My other takeaway is how low the print catalog is on there. That's probably the most expensive and the most time-consuming item on the list. I've spent many months creating those in my past lives, and I don't miss it one bit.
Oh no, the ROI is so low in those print catalogs. I was sad that it ranked as high as it did. So definitely not a good use of budget. But I agree. The PDF data sheets are not sexy, but clearly from this data, they're critical. The other thing that I like about this slide is I like looking at videos and webinars. They're very closely ranked here, and I think there's a lot of overlap in how these formats are consumed. When you think about the on-demand webinar versus the video, it's kind of a gray area, where one bleeds into the other. And based on what I'm seeing so far in 2021 at True Marketing, I've just declared it. This is the year for webinars. This is the year of the webinar, kind of like the year of the dog or whatever it is this year. Attendance has been up dramatically at our clients' webinars, at our own webinars, and I'm sure some of this is in part to industry events not happening face to face. And so it'll be interesting to see how things progress as the world backs up and backs up. The world opens back up and people start traveling. Will we still see this big spike in webinar attendance? And I tend to think they're here to stay. I mean, they've long been a great source. So anyway, we'll see. But for 2021, go forth and conquer those webinars. Now, while I'm on the subject of webinar and video, let's take a deeper dive into video itself and see what these technical buyers had to say. We asked, how often do you watch videos for work? Okay, a whopping 96% of engineers watch some videos for work, and this is up from 93% from the previous year. I mean, that's almost everyone, right?
Yeah, am I reading that correctly? That 48% are consuming more than an hour of video content per week for work? Because that's
Per
huge.
week. Per
Yeah,
week. Yeah.
yeah, this should be a major takeaway for manufacturers because it's shifting the idea of what video content is. It's so much more than that company overview video that we've all seen. YouTube is the #2 search engine because everyone hunts on there for the content to learn how to do something or how to use something. So think of this as a great platform for product demos and installation. We have a lot of manufacturers having success using how-to videos for even for their online tools and their website. So anything that you can't explain, you can explain better in a video.
Yeah, and these don't have to be that slickly produced corporate video type thing either. So, lighting and sound are important in any video, but these days the equipment is there to turn your iPhone even into a good camera or buy a cheap webcam that at least has 1080p. So there's a lot of hacks to doing this that are inexpensive but get you more videos more quickly. So we've covered a broad range of types of content, and now I'd like to dig into gated content, or that is content behind a form, which of course is a popular way for your website to be turned into a lead generating machine. We wanted to know, one, will engineers fill out a form? And if so, two, which types of content are most likely to receive that valuable form complete? So the survey asked, when offered technical content, but asked first to complete a short form to download the material, which types of content are most likely to entice you to provide your information? And as you can see here, the top 3 most valued content pieces remain the same from our last year's findings, which is white papers and CAD drawings. And it's funny, last year CAD drawings was on top and white papers are #2, and this year they flipped. So you can see the two of those are always neck and neck for the top 2 spots. Video tutorials was a new response that we added this past year, and it comes in at 32%, just ahead of webinars and product configurators. Engineers are least enticed to provide their contact information for ROI calculators and infographics. And only 17% of engineers said they are never willing to fill out a form in exchange for information.
Yeah, it's your sentence structure or your question structure is interesting to me because you said content you're willing to fill out a form for. We've been told for years that engineers and architects are allergic to forms, but they're just like the rest of us. They need content to do their jobs. They'll complete a form to get it. It's an understood transaction. We do it every day. So let's actually chat about uh, some content on the website. We asked, how important is it to see a 3D preview to assist in product selection? 63% think this is very important and 29% consider it somewhat important, making 92% of engineers and architects who consider a 3D preview as an important factor for product selection.
Huh. So I expected 3D to be a nice to have, but in thinking about some of the challenging spaces that design engineers and architects are working with, I guess it's no wonder that this is an important piece of content.
Yeah, a photo is great, a drawing is great, depending on how much detail is there. It's really helpful to have a 3D preview though when the product has options or configurations. I was actually just last week trying to buy a lid for our septic tank out in our yard. I could find plenty of 2D single drawings or a photo of the top of it. And I was just like, come on, I want to see the other side of this thing, turn it around so I can see if it's going to fit. Engineers have to go through that every day for every product they specify. So let's get to the next one. If a supplier does not offer CAD or BIM models online, what do you do? 44% redraw the part themselves, 36% find from another supplier, and only 20% actually call or email to contact the supplier directly. This is really speaking to companies who assume people reach out if they don't see what they want online or what they need online. That may be true for certain groups, but is not universally true. 80% of the time, if they don't see what they need, they bounce.
This is powerful data. So by not offering a CAD or BIM model, you add friction to the buying process and risk losing the sale altogether. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, if we jump to the next one, it builds right off of that thought. So we asked, if you download a CAD or BIM file of a part, does the physical part ultimately get purchased? 82% of respondents here said yes. When I download a digital model, I eventually buy the product. This question is actually the genesis of the survey for us. We've done this for many years, and we've spoke with many manufacturers who told us this anecdotally, but we'd also speak with manufacturers who weren't buying it. They didn't think someone downloading a thing from your website would actually lead to a sale. So we said, let's ask the engineers. We've done this survey 5 or 6 times now, and we keep getting the same result.
Wow, 82%. Wow. Okay, so by offering this type of file, you've taken the friction out of the buying process and you have yourself a leading indicator of a sale. That's powerful insight for sales leadership.
Yes, exactly. It's perfect for forecasting or just building pipeline staffing, any of those things. It's a great leading indicator of what's coming next. And it actually leads perfectly into the next data point. We asked, when you specify a supplier part for a design, what quantity is typically purchased for production? Now, this is building on the previous question where we asked if they are buying the products they download. Now we're asking how many. You can see it's not just one. 38% purchase that 2 to 5 range, but it's those last two that are very telling. 5% purchase 50 to 100 products, and 9% purchase 100 plus. So when you do the math on that, it averages out to 20 parts per download.
Wow, that's more helpful data to help forecast and manage a pipeline. And Adam, I imagine the number changes though based on the size of the company, the size of the project, and it might even be influenced by the demographics of who answered your research study.
Yeah. I mean, these are gross averages here. We have components that may cost thousands of dollars, AC drives and motors, as well as tiny electrical components, which may cost a few cents. But if you do some quick math and you say company gets 100 downloads and 82% of those convert to a sale, so that's 82 sales. If you multiply that by 20, that's 1,600 products sold. That is the power of providing this kind of content.
Wow, boom, that's powerful data right there. Well, Adam, we've covered a lot of ground here with our combined research findings. This was really cool, and thank you. This was all Adam's idea to put our research studies together. And I'd like to now move into our 6 marketing tips for manufacturers. So, starting at number 1, websites should be easy to use with a streamlined path to product information. You should offer a variety of content, including visual and in-depth technical information. Remove friction from the buying process by offering CAD and BIM files and printable PDF datasheets. Use high-value gated content, not salesy contact forms, to capture leads. Track and follow up on all content downloads. And know that content form submits don't equal sales readiness. So watch for buying signs. So when we say follow up on content downloads, it doesn't mean they're ready to talk to sales.
Yes, but each of those content downloads is a valuable lead, which should be nurtured in your sales and marketing process. And that's big. They don't need a sales call necessarily, but nurture them and keep them alive and marching down the path. But my overall takeaway is this customer experience has largely moved online, and manufacturers need to streamline the path and provide as much detailed product information as they can. When they finally see engineering data as marketing content, it's like they enter the matrix. They'll finally be delivering what their audience needs, and their sales will reflect that.
The matrix.
Oh
I
yeah, we're
love
there.
that. Well, my take is that all of these tips are focused on helping buyers find the information they need to make a purchase decision. And by being generous with your content and your expertise, you're much more likely to make it to that final buying table when they narrow down who they want to work with. So just be generous and build your content and put your buyer first. Well, it looks like we have a little bit of time to tackle questions. So Andre, I'll have you take it away to hop in and facilitate.
All right, sounds good. Happy to help. So we will transition to the Q&A section here, and I definitely do see some questions that came in throughout that presentation.
All right,
The
bring them
first
on.
question is pretty straightforward for both of you. It is, are these reports publicly available?
Yes, we will have a link that we'll be sending in the follow-up to this webinar.
All right. Okay, got another question about the recording, and that will also be sent in the follow-up email to this presentation. One question here, I'm guessing this is for Adam. It says that BIM and 3D CAM models seem to not be represented as a content type in many of these questions. Is this affected by the audience responding or the questions asked? Or perhaps that's actually for Wendy, since those specifications did appear in Adam's research a little bit more.
Yeah. So great question. So we did not include CAD on all of our questions. So the only ones that included CAD we've shown here today. So no other reason, promise.
All right. Okay, I see a question here. It says, where do you get your data from? Is that overall engineers or specific industry? I'm guessing we both could jump on that one.
Yeah, like I said, we have so the park community portals are online portals where engineers go to find manufacturer content and download. They enter a form there, and it's all industries, types, engineers, architects. We didn't get specific on this one about what they do. It doesn't tend to be super relevant because no matter what the product type, if it's a product being specified or what it's being specified onto, it's the same transaction basically. They need that content. They don't want to draw it themselves, and the manufacturers don't want them going to their competitor to get a drawing.
Yeah, and as far as our research report, you can see a breakdown of the demographics if you download the report itself, but we had a very nice cross-section of industries. So no one industry accounted, I think, for more than 15% or ish of respondents. So you saw everything from, automotive to mill aerospace to wastewater to scientific companies. So it was a nice cross-section. Again, look for that in the demographics in the report.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question here, I believe would be for Adam. It is, when is a manufacturer-specific BIM object accessed by an architect or specifier?
It is usually within the design process. So they are, say an architect is tasked with specifying a bench for a stadium or something like that, or a park. They'll go on to manufacturer websites and they'll grab those to test fit within their greater design. So it's at that stage where the manufacturer wants that architect to know who they are and the part number there, the product number, and how to get back to them. And the architect needs the information to test fit, make sure it looks right and fits right into their design. So it tends to be early in the process, but they want to continue those touch points. An architectural project tends to go on for a little bit longer. It has a little bit more of a lull in between the dropping that model into the design and the purchase. So the manufacturer wants to keep in touch with that architect or the specifier to make sure that everything is going as planned and that they're going to specify the correct product for the design.
Okay, sounds good. And another question for you, Adam. How does a mechanical engineer's behavior differ from an architectural professional?
Interesting you asked that, because when we conducted the survey, we had it set up to actually bisect it and have a report for engineers and a report for architects. And by the time we were looking at the data, it was not statistically unique. They were both very similar in they both like their 3D preview. They both purchase the products they download. I think they're averaged into the how many parts they buy per download, but it was really, they lined up a lot better than even we thought they would.
Okay. All right. Question for potentially both of you here. We have you gained insights on willingness to request a product sample or the effectiveness of a, quote, request a sample form?
Ooh, I really like that question, and I'm actively seeking questions for next year's survey. So I'm going to add that to my list, although sadly it's not something that we've asked in the past.
So anecdotally, we have manufacturers that used to, it was their bread and butter that they would send the physical samples on demand for electronic products or architectural components. They'd send those out to test fit within the space, but they found that providing a digital model of that has almost universally replaced that. They don't have to be giving away products or shipping things back and forth nearly as much because they can test it in a space digitally.
Wow, what a big cost savings that would be.
Yeah, okay. Another question here, and I will toss it out and both of you can potentially provide an answer. It is, what type of nurturing is recommended after a content download? For example, an email campaign rather than a sales call.
Yeah, I'll start. So our best practice is, if possible, set up an automated nurture based on the persona. So if you know their job title, their industry, and you have personas set up, then do a 3 to 5 touch nurture that helps them dig deeper into that subject matter. So it might be you're putting case studies in front of them, or now another downloadable item that's a nice content asset to have. And then you're looking for those behavioral signs. So are they opening those emails? Are they clicking again? And as you get further into that nurture, you can offer, a meeting with a salesperson, and you might, instead of a salesperson, call them, a technical consultant or whatever terminology fits within your company. But that tends to work extremely well to, again, you're soliciting, okay, how interested are they? Are they continuing to engage?
Yeah, I would 100%. The one thing we tell manufacturers often to do is send something, an automated email, fairly soon after the content download happens, because you want to make sure they know your email, how to get back to you, your phone number, your website, the information about what they just downloaded. So connecting the loop there, and then just communicating to them relevant things about that. You don't want to be spammy, you don't want to be pushy, but if there's a discount to offer on the product, pricing, availability, any of those things that are relevant to that product purchase, that's a great thing to communicate to them and make it a relevant conversation.
Yeah, and one more tip, if you guys are familiar with those calendar apps, everybody's using them now. I have a HubSpot version, other people have Calendly. If you have that set up for your salesperson, you can put that into your workflow towards the end, and people can actually set up an appointment. So imagine now you have not only a lead that you're, offering to sales, but actually securing an appointment. That's a big marketing win.
Okay, thank you both. Another question here, and I actually see a version of this question pop up a couple times, so I'll read this one. It says, thank you for the great webinar. I'm auditing tonight from Japan. Were there any special differences in the survey results between countries?
So our survey data was specifically North America and English speaking, just to make it easy on me and us for parsing the data. But we have seen very similar results in the international versions of our survey. This one specifically, though, is North America English speaking.
Yeah, and ours, when you look at the demographic, I would say Asian countries were less statistically relevant than North America and Western Europe. And the biggest international differences we saw when looking at Western Europe versus North America was the popularity of trade shows. So I wish I could be more specific to Japan, but I don't have, I think, enough statistically relevant a cluster of people to help with that.
Okay. Another question here that once again popped up a couple times is about software. So someone points out that a couple of the tips seem to be more related to physical products, and they are in a software business. So they're looking for advice about how best to position a company to draw in buyers on something not tangible or easily illustrated as a 3D model.
Wendy, you want to take that one?
Sure. So when we work with software companies, one of the most popular content assets are those how-to videos. And if you want to see a great example of this, go look at Crank software. They create infotainment or a development platform for companies in automotive and other spaces that create that cool little interface you have in your car. And they had a goal for a while of creating one video per day. And they took just a very specific feature of their product and created a short how-to demo video on it. And this repository helped them with pre-sales as well as customer support. And they killed in search optimization through using this tactic. So, the point is, either way, if you have a hardware or software product, how can you demonstrate those features in a way that appeals to your buyer? And you saw, you can use different content form factors to achieve that. So, Crank also did ebooks and they had case studies, but it was really these short demo videos that seemed to really catapult them in terms of drawing in awareness and ultimately generating leads on their website.
Yeah, that really depends on what part of the buyer's journey we're talking about too. Is it top of funnel where we're just trying to get awareness, or you're really trying to nurture them and prove worth? So that's where those things like case studies and white papers tend to really prove out.
All right. Question for you, Adam, here. Do you recommend an EDA or CAD vendor?
No, we describe ourselves as CAD agnostic. We work happily and friendly with all the CAD platforms in what we do, but we think they're all great. And as far as the design side of things, they all tend to have their strengths and weaknesses. So I guess it would sort of be what type of product is being designed and what the industry is, but really we work with all of them.
Okay. And a question for you, Wendy. For an email, what would you suggest in terms of the balance of text and imagery? So I guess any resources that you can recommend that would really help someone out with structuring an email.
Yeah, so you want to be fairly succinct in your emails. I'm thinking about how to answer this from e-newsletters and emails. So e-newsletters tend to be a little more graphically oriented, where you have a relevant image and a couple of lines to entice someone, but really what you're after is to get them to click into that content and come back to your website. That's ultimately, you're wanting to get someone to take action. So you should avoid, doing the content vomit all over your emails or e-newsletter. Keep it brief, entice someone, and then pull them into your website. Now, with that said, there is a time and a place for using things like infographics and other things that explain concepts very well with imagery, and that works within an email environment too. Might just be kind of hard to read though. So just base it on your content, but also remember, get them back to your website.
Yeah, I'd back that up. We have two different formats that we send our e-newsletters in. We have one that is customer stories, and those tend to be a little bit more text. You typically with one image and much cleaner. And then we have our monthly e-newsletter, which has a little bit more images and makes it a little bit more enticing. But consider what the content is for the image and the text balance.
Yeah, and I guess one more comment. We asked if you download the full research study, we asked about e-newsletter behavior. So we said, do you scan the subject line? Do you open it? Like, of the ones that you subscribe to, like, what is your behavior? And you might imagine that a good portion of people scan the subject line, and if it sounds interesting, they'll dive in. And so I can't emphasize enough how important it is not to have a generic subject line like May e-newsletter, but really help people to understand what's in it for them. And then when you open it, the next set of people that answered said they just scan it really quickly to see if there's something relevant. So I would say that image, but also your headlines of each piece of, if it's an e-newsletter, each piece are super important as well.
Spend time on your subjects.
All right, thank you both. Another question here, specifically for Adam. It says, Adam, do you have any customer case studies or examples of manufacturers who did not previously provide any digital CAD content and how their business transformed or grew, or the outcomes from them making a change?
We do have case studies. They're on our site on the customer success page. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you exact numbers. We have many manufacturers that have transformed their businesses from doing this. It's been around for a lot longer than people know. It's nearly 20 years now. So we had really, it was one of those things, those early adopters springboarded their business to the front of the pack. There's a lot of little companies that, you know, they saw the big guy out there and they said, we have to compete on service and tools and other cool features. And this was one of them. And they launched their business. Then it became a point where if you don't have it, you're kind of missing out. And that we're in that stage now. So manufacturers are looking around, they see all of their peers have something like this. If they don't, they're a little bit behind. So we've had a lot of manufacturers that have had a lot of success from this.
Okay, thank you. All right, Wendy, a question for you, and Adam, feel free to jump in afterward. We have, how do you balance providing a good amount of technical data when products you're selling are complex and often extremely custom?
Yeah, yeah, and when they're custom, that's tough too because you can't always share. Maybe some of the information's confidential when it's like that. So again, I always start from building that buyer persona and thinking in terms of what they need. So what are their pain points? What are they looking to solve? And then how can you speak to them in their terminology, and how can you demonstrate your technical expertise? And when it's highly technical, that might have to be done in bite-sized chunks. It might have to be done through case studies where you're not revealing, you know, the exact person you solved that for, but, you know, a large defense manufacturer, for example. And then it's done in a variety of ways. So that's the other complexity to this is, you know, engineers are consuming content in different ways. And so that same white paper could be broken into multiple blog posts and could be taken and repurposed into a recorded webinar. And you'll find that different engineers are attracted to different form factors. And you're telling the same story, but you're telling it in different ways. So that's another way to get things across. But more than anything, just start with who is the persona and what do they need to know to trust us with their custom solution, and start from there.
Yeah, we have a lot of manufacturers that do sort of a variation on this. Custom is one of those words that gets a little bit confusing. Does custom mean the sky's the limit and anything they choose is what they can have? Or is it within parameters, and can you guide them down the path of what they need based on the products that you make and the variations on the products you make? So you could have a configurator and maybe it's not outward facing, and one of your design engineers could work with their team and design it together. That shows a lot of value as far as the tools that you have, but also your service and willingness and flexibility to work with them. But there's a lot of other ways that you can get creative with that too.
Yeah, and you know, we work, Adam, about half of our business are with technical service organizations, so like system integration companies, where it really truly is everything is so custom. And we find the biggest mistake is they'll talk about their technical acumen, which is incredibly high at these companies, but they'll also be too generic because they're like, we can do anything for anyone as long as it's built on, you know, VMware and LabVIEW and, you know, Rockwell Automation or whatever it is. And so we encourage these companies to build upon, okay, what are the verticals where you're truly the best? You know, and where do you shine? And, you know, focus in those areas first where the right persona meets the right industry, and really tell that story first. So a lot of nuances depending on the type of
Yeah,
business, for
totally.
sure.
All right, thank you both. Another question here, I believe for Adam. Other than manufacturer websites, are there other places where engineers and architects go to find products and their BIM or CAD files? They provide an example like caddetails.com.
Yeah, so we have, there's a website that we have that's called 3dfindit.com. And then we have other sister portals to that we call the part communities. That's where there's thousands of manufacturers and they have all their products available on there. you can search, download, you can cross-reference, you can say, you know, if I have this product X that I like, here's other, I can search by their shape or dimensions. And it's a great way to discover new manufacturers and test and fit that content in your design.
Adam, what about distributors? Do they ever have this
Yes,
type of information on their sites
yes.
too? Yeah,
So
I would think so.
yeah, that's been a big push over the last few years for us because distributors are obviously in between in the transaction. So when working with us, the manufacturer just gives the distributor permission to reuse the 3D preview and the content on their site. And so it's a handshake deal between them, and they work out the specifics on that. But it's great for the distributor because they have a new shiny thing to show off on their website. And the manufacturer gets to get even more ROI out of their exposure from this tool. So it's totally a win-win. But a lot of distributors are coming on board and adding by manufacturer these to their websites.
All right. Okay, and I see a question here that would be for both of you. Do you have any websites in mind, and maybe people should reach out to you specifically about this later, but any websites that capture some of the key elements of what your surveys are emphasizing that you could provide as examples?
Oh, wow. Sure. And I can send you to our clients' websites and you can take a look.
Yeah.
So, you know, Adam, I'll have you start. I'm sure there's specific ones where it really highlights the CAD
Yeah.
files. And
Yes. BrennanIndustries.com, ColsonGroupUSA.com, and NKK switches all come to mind. They're all sort of our all-stars. They really get it. They have it implemented. You know, we tell manufacturers, don't just put this in one place and one navigation path on your website. Have it all over the place, or at least ways to get to it. And all those manufacturers have really embraced this, and it's been the cornerstone of their business. So yeah, Colson, Brennan, and NKK.
yeah, great. And then for those of you who are in maybe system integration or software, so I already mentioned Crank, they're a great one on the software side. And for you system integration people out there, maybe go to Genuine, GENUEN. That's a site we recently launched, and it's an interesting example of 3 companies that have merged together under one new entity. So those of you that are looking for a brand marketing example, that's a great one. Another one is Vertech, VERTECH. And I like some of the terminology they use. They call their staff control freaks because they're in control automation. So I think they have a really neat tone to their site, and both utilize lots of technical content to explain deeply technical and personalized solutions.
All right. Okay, another question here about testimonials. This would be for both of you. We'll start with Wendy. How would testimonials best be used as content on your website?
Well, they're very important to show validity behind what you're doing to build your credibility. And the best way is to have branded case studies. So, you know, have the person's photo, have a quote, and then have an in-depth case study about that solution. If you can't go branded, as I mentioned before, at least, you know, say a, you know, top 3 defense contractor, or top 3 telecom company located in Norway, or, you know, whatever you can do to sort of insinuate without breaking, you know, any agreement you have on the NDA. But for technical audiences, you need to be technical in that case study. So don't leave it as they're great, good customer service, whatever. It needs to be, where is the meat? What did you solve? How did you solve it? You know, what was unique about it? Have diagrams, have photos, get nitty gritty with it.
100%. If it's all fluff, people can tell right off the bat. If you can have a statistic in there or proof, I mean, even the quote, even you know, if it's just these guys are great, like it doesn't have as much weight as we doubled our business with them or whatever that might be. So be specific, and if you can tie a number to it, even better.
Yeah, that's great. And to build off of that, there's actually really 2 types of case studies that we do. One is the technical case study, and those tend to be the most popular. they appeal to that engineer specifier that's the first one to find you and recommend you. However, those business case studies that show cost savings or efficiencies or whatever it is, those are really important when it gets to a buying team making a purchase decision. They may or may not go on your website. They may be something that sales uses. So think of case studies in different ways too, as you're, have different objectives.
Okay, excellent points. Question here about requesting contact information for forms. Obviously, we want to have as little drop off as possible. The person pointed out that 17% of people who may not want to enter any information, but sounds like they are still willing to request some information. So they're wondering, what is the minimum amount of info that you would request to allow them to download the materials?
I have data on this.
Okay.
So it's in our research report. I know it's in last year. I'm trying to remember if it's in this year's. And we asked specifically, what are you willing to fill out? And, first name, last name, email is great, company name, and then it drops off significantly as you ask more things beyond that. So go check out that research report and you can see exactly which fields are most and least likely to gain their information. But stop at 5 or less. Less is better. And what you can do is use progressive forms. So if you have a marketing automation platform and you remember them, then when they go for download number 2, you can ask a new question, and remembering, everything you already know about them, just ask one more new thing.
Yeah, I agree. On our site, I keep the forms to a minimum. A lot of ours are just an email or just an email, first name and phone number, something like that. One of the manufacturers we work with has had great success, and he extends his form yearly. And his theory is, he has the data to back it up, that it proves if someone is willing to fill out 11 form fields, they're kind of for real. And if they're
That's
not,
true.
and so he kind of uses it as a weed out process before it, he doesn't have to vet them after the fact nearly as much if they're proving and filling out more. That may not be for everyone or every industry, but for that specific instance, he says it works.
You know what? If the pipeline is just too full, I could see doing that. But if the pipeline is too narrow,
Exactly.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. A couple final questions here. One I'm going to try to combine for this first question. So Wendy, is there any data on pay-per-click PPC advertising and the best practices for social media in the manufacturing space?
Okay, so on paid advertising, I've not asked that in research. I've asked about retargeting, so I'll get to that in just a second. But what we've seen from our own experience with our clients, Google performs abysmally to technical audiences for pay-per-click. So I wouldn't, hang your whole strategy on Google. However, LinkedIn performs quite well right now, as does online industry publications. So if you're looking to do online advertising, I would go there first and put Google at a distant third. And then retargeting, we asked a question of, we explained what retargeting is in the research report, and then we asked whether or not engineers were creeped out by it, or did they find it helpful, or did they just ignore it and not really notice it? And a third were creeped out, actually a little more than a third. And then some found it helpful, and the others just didn't notice it. So it was almost like a third, and third, but a little more creeped out than everything else. So if you're doing retargeting, I would tread lightly. I would definitely measure it and make sure you're not alienating people. And then finally, for social, we did ask about social in the research questions, and industry networking sites. So think like associations or places where like-minded buyers gather. Those were the most popular. And then as far as like just our general social platforms, LinkedIn by far was the best. And then things like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, none of those performed well. So none of them. So, use your tools. You can still efficiently post there, and there's a there's a reason to do that. Culture posts are really good in those other platforms, but the majority of your social strategy should be centered on those top two that I discussed.
Right. Okay, and then a question here for Adam, and we'll wrap up with this one. It's actually just, what have been the most effective marketing efforts for your own business, for Part Solutions?
So we are always customer first. We always put our customers in the forefront, and we're all about showing how smart and forward thinking and great they are, especially when they're, their company and their business is doing well using our stuff. We love that. But for us, one of the things that we like doing is we spend the time every week to create an e-newsletter. There's some that say that the email is dead and it's all social now, but I don't agree. We use it to help nurture leads down the path and make them more sales ready. We keep them informed of what's going on, new product developments, other companies that are having success with our tools, and I would say that's one of the cornerstones of what we do.
Okay. All right, with that, we will conclude the Q&A section. Thank you everyone for submitting your questions. And of course, thank you to Adam and Wendy for providing those answers. We got a lot of people putting in questions that were just thank you. So they really appreciated those answers there. All
Yeah,
right, and
thank
with
you,
that,
Andre, for facilitating.
of course. All right.
Yeah.
And we'll transition to the last slide here, the contact us.
Yeah, so again, I'm Adam Beck. You can find us at partsolutions.com. We have ebooks for download. Infographics are wide open, no forms on those, or there's ways you can learn a little bit more about our tools. You can reach out to me directly. There's my LinkedIn address, or you can email me at adam.beck@partsolutions.com.
And you can visit truemarketing.com to learn more about my agency. And while you're there, you can subscribe to our blog, to my podcast called Content Marketing Engineered. And we have an e-newsletter as well that is monthly. And you can also cruise our content assets. We have ebooks, research reports, and more. And if you're looking for a more comprehensive guide to content marketing, I do have a book called Content Marketing Engineered, which you can find through our site or on Amazon. And then finally, if you're looking for a marketing partner, I'd be happy to meet with you to explore your needs, and you can hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to meet with you. So thank you all for being here today. Again, the recording and presentation file will be emailed to you this afternoon, and hope each of you have a fantastic day. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy.